Hello and welcome. How's everything going? My name is Lynn, and today I am going to show two methods for creating a split window card. I've seen a lot of these on various groups across Facebook, and I think the design was made popular by Jennifer McGuire, and it's really, really fun, easy design that's very effective and a little bit of a twist on a book fold card. And I've recently made one of those that I posted with Paper Sweeties. So what I thought I would do is actually show two different ways to approach making a split window card, especially since my upcoming Crafty Fun with Friends live stream with Kim Creates and Stamper Girl. That's what we'll be doing, is using the newest Artful Angel release, and we're all going to be making split window cards. So I thought I would post a tutorial just in case you want to craft along with us, you're not familiar with the design, and that way you can learn a little bit about how to make a split window card. So here what I have is a piece of cardstock that is actually from Spellbinders. This is in Lagoon. And I'm actually going to use this as my card base because it's a 100-pound cover. So pretty nice, thick, solid color cardstock. It's cut to 8.5 by 5.5, and along that 8.5-inch edge, I've already scored it in half at 4.25. I took the circle aperture die that I plan to cut my aperture with, and I die cut that out of copy paper, just thin copy paper. And the reason for that is because thin copy paper is really easy to fold in half so that you can determine the center of whatever shape die you want to use as your aperture. I've got my pattern paper here, and what I did was I lined up the folded edge of my copy paper. I scored the front of my card base where I wanted that to line up. I've put my pattern paper where I plan to attach it to my card base right up against that score line. And what I'm going to do is line up my top cutting plate so that it's just past the score line, and I'm going to do a partial die cut. So because I am cutting through two layers, and two pretty thick layers at that, so we have a 100-pound cover as our card base, and the Not Too Shabby Shop papers are really nice quality. So I would say they're a good layering weight, maybe 65 to 75 pound. But having run the die through once, it will at the very least score the bottom layer enough so that you can actually nestle your die right back in the exact same position. And again, I just did a partial die cut so that just that right half of my circle was cut. And I reinforced my score lines again, since we did flatten out those score lines when I ran it through the die cutting machine. But here you can see that that we're effectively creating the same split window design, but with just half of that circle cut. And so that still allows us to fold that back. And so that's just a different way of creating the split window. One of the things that's nice about this option is that, especially, and this is why I chose to use solid color cardstock, because then you don't actually have to cover, that left-hand edge if you don't want, because I picked a color that would coordinate with the pattern papers I knew I wanted to use on this card. And so I'm just gonna leave that as just the card base, but I did decide to cut out this circle out of some really lovely gingham paper that does come in the paper pad that's part of the I Want It All bundle. And then I'll glue down my image here. Now this cup is from the Cup of Cheer stamp set, which is not part of that Gingerbread Kisses bundle. It was an older release, I think. And then to complete the split window design, and this is how it's similar to a bookfold card, what you want to do is just glue down the left-hand portion of your card front, including the entire circle. And that's what will allow for the right-hand side to kind of swing open and give you that really lovely split window effect. And so I do love my love from Lizzie's pinstripe stickers, so I'm just adding that to both sides of my pattern paper just to clean up that edge a little bit and add a little bit of shine to the front of the card. I've got some strips of I think I did 1/2-inch strips of that pink gingham paper just to bring some of that to the inside of the card as well. And on the inside, since the fold folds away, you can really push that paper as close to the center as you want. It's more on the outside, where you just want to make sure that your pattern paper doesn't cross over your score line, because if it does, then it might make it a little bit difficult to actually open your card front all the way. And I've just picked out this sentiment. It says, "Have a sweet holiday season." And that does come from the Gingerbread Hugs stamp set. And I backed that onto some pink cardstock, so that brings a little bit more of that pink that's in the pattern paper, brings it forward a little bit, and my last touch will be a few Nouveau drops. And that pretty much finishes this card. Really, really lovely. I think that's the method that I prefer, doing the partial die cutting. However, if you're not a fan of doing partial die cutting, maybe this method will work a little bit better for you. So again, I'm starting off with a card base that is 120 pound, cut to 8.5 by 5.5. This time I thought I would use an octagon die, and again, I've cut that out of just plain old copy paper so that it is lightweight, easy to fold in half. I positioned that where I wanted it on my card front, and instead of scoring that second line, all I've done is drawn out the second line. So I just drew a line. I used my T-square ruler to make sure that it was completely squared off, and then lined up the fold of that copy paper so that I know where I want to position my pattern papers. And what I'm going to do is pick out my papers that I want to use as the mats and layers on my card front. And what I'll do is actually combine two different pattern papers, one for the left side and one for the right side. But when I cut these papers, I'm going to cut them such that when they meet up in the center, they combined will measure 4 inches wide by 5.25 tall. So basically, the size of a mat that I would normally use if I was just cutting it out of a single piece of paper. So the reason why I'm not giving you exact measurements is because all of this will depend on the shape die that you use to cut your aperture out of. So mine just happens to work out to, I think it was I think 1.5 inches, and the right hand side was 2.5 inches. But again, what you cut your papers to will ultimately depend on two things really. One, whether you want the white of the card base to show along the borders, and two, you want to, it will be different based on the shape die, because where these two papers meet up is where the center of your shape die should be. And I'm going to tape down my pattern papers right onto my card front where they will ultimately get glued down. And I'm going to position my die back in place so you can see the points of the octagon line up exactly where those two pattern papers meet up. And then I'll run all of that through my die cutting machine and die cut them all at the same time. And of course, I'm using even thicker paper than the Spellbinders solid color cardstock. So my card base is 120 pound. So this die did not cut through both layers, but that's perfectly okay because it will emboss enough of, or deboss, I guess, enough of the card base so that there's that nice indentation that I can just nestle the die right back in and then finish cutting through the card base. So the reason why I like doing my die cutting this way is so that my pattern papers I know will fit exactly, be in the exact right position. And since I did run this through my die cutting machine a couple times, I'm just reinforcing those score lines again because they got a little bit flattened out in the process. But one thing to note is that with the second score line, remember I only drew a pencil line when I was doing all of my positioning, and I only scored it after I die cut. And the reason why I did it in that order is so that the octagon piece that falls out of this, that's a nice solid shape. So I could use that, I can nestle it back in, I can use it on a different project. If I didn't want to have my stamped image already colored up before I started recording, I could have stamped and colored right onto there, and that way it doesn't have a score line running through the center. Just then, I took just a fly's eyelash off of both of my pattern papers, but you want to specifically take off that little bit of cardstock from the edge that meets up in the center, basically the edge that will butt up against the score line. And the reason to take off a little bit of cardstock there is so that you don't have any pattern paper that crosses over or overlaps with your score line. That way your the front of your card can fold back completely. So yes, ultimately that's going to mean you can see a little bit of the white of the card base, and I'm okay with that, and that's sort of why I wanted to leave a little bit of a white border all the way around so that the white going down the center isn't too out of place, because there is a white border on the other edges. And then that's when I realized that when I went to cut my gingerbread cookie, I didn't use the correct orientation that I ultimately ended up using on my card front. Not a big deal, and actually turned out to be a happy accident in the end, because I ended up, instead of using white behind there, I ended up choosing a solid color, this really nice pink, and I think ultimately that looks a little bit nicer than the white I was intending on using. So the Gingerbread Kisses mini bundle also comes with a coordinating ephemera pack. Really, really cute. You have lots of gingerbread cookies, candies, gingerbread houses, and coffees, which are fantastic. And so I'm just going to collage up a couple of pieces. Now, the stamped and colored gingerbread cookie that I'm using is actually from a different stamp set, but it works really, really well. I think it's super, super cute. And what I did with the ephemera piece that is the gingerbread house is I'm going to hang that off of my octagon piece here. And I want to intentionally position it so that parts of it's going to be seen when the card is closed. And mostly that's just going to be the actual gingerbread house. So just to create a little bit of a scene for my gingerbread man, I thought having the house would be really fun. But when you open the card, that's when it's revealed that it's not just the one gingerbread man, but you have a little gingerbread boy on the opposite side of the house. So I thought it was kind of cute to have a little bit that is revealed when you open the card, just as a little bit of a surprise element. And so I'll go ahead and attach my cookie here with some low profile foam, and I'm going to give him a little candy cane that he can hold as well. And then my final touch for this is going to be a sentiment. So this stamp set, the Gingerbread Hugs stamp set, has a really cute sentiment. It's Christmas calories don't count, which I think is appropriate for a card that has a lot of cookies all over it. And I've stamped it onto just a piece of scrap paper here, but I'm gonna actually ultimately turn this into a tag. And so I'll use my my all-in-one tool here. It's got a nifty little tool that lets you create that diagonal cut at the top of your tag, so that it's exactly mirrored on both sides. And so a little bit of twine tied in a bow at the top, and some Nuvo drops will ultimately be how I finish up this this card. So I hope that it's useful to see a couple of different approaches for how to create this wonderful design. Of course, check out Jennifer McGuire's video also. I think she does it more in the style of the second way, the one that I'm working on now. But I think hopefully between these my two methods and my video that I released yesterday, slightly different variation, more similar to this style of the second one, but hopefully it just shows you kind of different approaches that you can take to making this style of card. There's no right way, and ultimately they're going to look give you the same effect of having this really neat aperture that is kind of a book fold, but super special because it's got that split window design on the front. I am actually I like this method of doing the partial die cutting because I do like having the rest of my card base at the bottom of that aperture, and being able to kind of build everything up from there. But I know not everybody's a big fan of partial die cutting, so there are definitely lots of other approaches to making this. I hope that you'll join me and Stamper Girl and Kim Creates on the 22nd of this month during our live stream, where we'll be making a couple more split window design cards. And if you can't catch us live, hopefully you'll catch us on replay. but it's always fun to craft live and chat along with you. So I hope you can make it. And until then, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.